Yeah.
If the red light goes off, I know I've got a problem.
Good, yeah. All right, interview with Kermit Karns, Sunday, 23rd October 2011. All right. Okay, Kermit, where were you born now?
Chamberlain, South Dakota.
Okay, and how long did you live there?
I don't really know. I was born on January 17, 1917, and I think my dad left there about 1919 and moved to Parma, Michigan.
Okay, and
stayed in Parma, Michigan about 2 years. He's doing a dairy farm, and then he traded that for land in McLeod, Alberta, Canada. And that was about, and then he stayed there 2 years, 1923 and 1924. And then it was too cold for him there, so he traded that for another dairy farm near Staten, Oregon. And he stayed there 1 year in 1925. And in 1926, he traded that for a ranch in, I guess he traded for a ranch, a 240-acre farm, rather, 50 miles north of Miles City, Montana, in Garfield County. And then by the time he got there to Montana, well, he'd lost most of his money. So he kept losing more money all the time. And finally, he left in 1935 to move to Willow Creek, Montana. And I, in 1934, I'll back up a little bit, I started taking a Cook electrical correspondence course in 1935 that my brother had given me because he didn't finish it. So I finished about half of that, and I started winding automobile generator armatures and selling them to a man in Miles City by the name of Roy Cloud. Their wire cost me about 30 cents, and the postage was very little at that time. And so I got $1 for each armature I wound. But in the meantime, I needed a turning lathe to turn the solder off of the commutator after I had wound the armature and soldered the wires into the commutator. So I borrowed a foot-powered metal turning lathe from a neighbor, and I kept that for several years. And
now, you took an electrical correspondence course. Did you have a prior interest in this at all? I mean,
well, just in the correspondence course kind of whetted my appetite. I'd been fooling around with someplace. I had built rigged up a generator, a gasoline engine, sheep shearing engine, which had a vertical engine in it, and a 32-volt generator that come off of something, and I used that for charging 6-volt batteries, which you can do easily. And that's what kind of got me started between the batteries and the radio. I worked with radio a little bit too, and anyway, wound those armatures for 2 or 3 years, and then the man in Miles City decided one moment if I wanted to come to work for him, so I went to work for him for $1.50 a day, and I stayed with some friends there for a week or two, and then the man Roy Cloud said, I'll give you $1.50 a day and you can live in my house. I'll give you room and board. So that went off pretty good, but then one time at work, I was fooling around with another guy who was doing some welding, so my boss come along and fired me because I was working with somebody else a little bit. So I moved into a wrecking yard that had a little room on it and stayed in the wrecking yard for a week. Went back up to the old boss and said, "You want to come back to work for me?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "I'll give you $1.50 a day and you pay your own room and board." So this went on for about a year, and almost a year, I guess it was. And I found out I just couldn't make it on $1.50 a day, even in 1935, 4 and 5. So I see CCCs come along, so I joined the CCCs.
Now, did you get any salary with the CCC?
And with the CCCs, they paid $30 a month. $25 had to go to a beneficiary, usually your father or mother, but in this case, in my case, I handed it off to a friend that I was living with at the time. So he saved the money, and when I come back, I had a few dollars available. He gave me whatever it was. I don't know, it was several $100s anyway.
Yeah, so when we talked the first time, you saw a bulletin or something in the CCC that there was openings for radio operators in.
Right, it was It was for under communication operator, and it was a civil service bulletin, and they had a test authorized or set for a certain day in Missoula, Montana, and I had to go. I was pretty good at typing then, but I think I had to type 20 words a minute. So anyway, I had to rent a typewriter and take it to the site where the examination was, and I passed the typing test okay, and I'd had a little. I was in the CCCs that built a public address system, and I had it installed in the CCCs, and it's working there. So with that experience, and I qualified for this under communication operator. So somebody graded me in, and then the CIA at that time it was gave me the option to go into 3 places: Strivella, I think it was Strivella, Idaho, and Baker, Oregon, and Granger, Wyoming.
All right.
So I chose Granger, Wyoming because it was a little closer to Miles City, Montana, where I lived.
Now, when you arrived at Granger, you were married. What time frame did you get married? While you were in the CCC?
No, I got married after I got out of the CCCs, about 2 months.
Oh.
I got married on the 1st of October, 1937 at Granger, or Miles City, Montana, to Lottie Wolf.
Yeah. So a lot of this period was the height of the Depression. When you arrived at Granger, what were your first thoughts? I mean, in 1937, there wasn't much there. Even today, there's not much there.
Well, to what I was used to, Granger was a town, and I was used to towns. Miles City wasn't a big town either then.
Yeah.
And CC's camps weren't a big town either, so I was used to small towns, so that didn't bother me one bit.
Yeah. Now, you said the married operators had to live in town, and the bachelors lived on site. Is that correct?
Yeah, on site. They called him an airway keeper, and he was given the choice of living in this one quarters on the double deal there, double's residence station, and one half of one part of it, the keeper cat, the airway keeper cat, lived in with his family. The other side of it was the same identical right and left-hand houses, and the other side of it was for the operators, the single operators that lived in there.
Now, it was a 24-hour operation.
24-hour operation.
Did you ever have to spend days there on watch while your wife was back at the camp?
No, my wife was never at the CC camp. It was always at the town of Granger, where we had an apartment there in the town of Granger.
So she stayed at the apartment while you were on watch there.
Right, and she stayed at the apartment. Well,
yeah.
She might have come to work with me once or twice, but I don't recall that at all.
Yeah. So where did you do your shopping?
Mostly we did grocery shopping at a grocery in Granger, and they didn't carry much in the way of clothing. And we went to Kemmer sometimes, and sometimes once in a while to Green River, mostly to Rock Springs. I think Rock Springs. It was about 50 miles or something like that.
Yeah, that was quite a drive in those days, huh? Rock Springs.
But it had a good Highway 30 run right through there, and so it was well maintained.
Yeah. Okay. So, did you have any previous knowledge that Granger was going to close after you were there just a short time? Did they?
Well, it was over 2 years I was at Granger.
Yeah. No,
we didn't have any knowledge that it was going to close till perhaps a year before it closed.
Yeah. So, while you were there, were they doing any dismantling of the site?
Oh no, they didn't do any dismantling to the site till after we were gone.
After you were gone, then. Yeah. Okay. So then, after Granger, you went to Marshall, Missouri, then.
After Granger, the government moved me to Marshall, Missouri, along with all the rest of the personnel that would go to Marshall. I don't remember, there was 1 or 2 wouldn't go, but most of them went to Marshall, Missouri.
Yeah. Now, did you get any promotion when you left Granger?
Not to Marshall. That was all transferred in grade.
Yeah. Okay.
And
so,
in the meantime, at Granger, I had passed a 30-minute radio code test, and that qualified me to bid on a higher job, and so which I did. And so then, after I got to Marshall, I stayed there like about 6 weeks, I guess it was, and then I got promoted and transferred to Columbia, Missouri.
Yeah. Well, during this period at Granger and Marshall, what was your job nomenclature?
The job title, it was under airway communication operator.
Okay. And then it says after you were transferred to Columbia, Missouri then.
From Marshall, Missouri, and promoted.
That was after Marshall then.
Yeah, after Marshall.
Yeah, okay, so.
And promoted because I got to pass the code test. I don't remember what the job title was then. I think it was, I really don't know offhand.
Now, you were strictly a radio operator at this period, correct?
Pardon?
You were strictly a radio operator during this time?
No, they didn't call them radio operators. They had, I think it was aircraft communicator.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Did you do any maintenance at all?
Not really. I didn't do any maintenance there until, I guess I got to Huron, South Dakota. I did a little maintenance on the radio range mostly. They had a maintenance technician headquartered in Aberdeen that came to Huron and took care of most of the radio equipment.
Yeah.
I did get indoctrinated on restart relays at Huron because we had thunderstorms that come along and have a power failure, and the radio engine generator would start, provide power, but the engine generator voltage transfer switch would transfer the voltage at too low a voltage, so the transmitters would not work. And the FAA had provided what they call restart relays, so I had figured out that the engine generator was transferring at too low a voltage. It would transfer something like less than 100 volts, and the transmitter relays would operate, but the restart relays would operate, but they would not bring in the control, the relays that started the transmitters. So the engine generator would be running and the transmitters would be off and everything else would be okay. So I found out that I could change the voltage setting on the transfer relay to about 200 volts, and then everything worked fine.
Did at this site then at Marshall in Columbus, Missouri, where you mentioned generators, they didn't utilize any commercial power then?
Yeah. Granger, of course, was strictly engine generator. They had 2 engine generators, but I didn't have very much to do with it. The only thing I checked them every watch, and that's about all I did to them. And Marshall, I don't recall it having an engine generator. Columbia, Missouri, but Columbia had a regular maintenance man, so I didn't have anything to do with maintenance at Columbia.
So you were at Columbia just a short time because
6 months on.
Yeah, and then you transferred to St. Louis, Missouri.
Yeah, I've been on a promotion to St. Louis and got that.
Was the site in town at St. Louis or out?
The site, the FAA's communication station site was in the airport, main airport building at St. Louis Airport. It was on the west side of the airport, as I recall. And the Weather Bureau was adjacent to us on one side, and the air traffic control offices were adjacent to us on the other side. We had little windows in both. We passed messages back and forth.
Oh, okay. Now, you were still in communications at this time, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay. Then when you got transferred to Huron, South Dakota, was that an opening that you chose, or was it a mandatory move?
Well, no, that was an advertised job, and I bid on the job, and they selected me. And I went from operator to operator in charge. And it seemed to me like, I don't know whether I got a promotion on that or not, but anyway, I went to operator in charge.
Yeah, OIC, operator in charge, okay, yeah. When you went to Huron, you got up to GS9, according to Huron.
Okay, I got a promotion then.
All right, so then, while you were at Huron, you got bumped.
Yeah, a man came from someplace, and the guy had been at Huron, had transferred to Pierre. Well, the guy that come back from overseas bumped the man at Pierre out, and he opted to bump me out at Huron. He wanted to come back to Huron. So as a result of that, they selected me for a job on the operator in charge at Sidney, Nebraska.
Yeah, okay. How'd you like Sidney?
Oh, pretty good. It was the war was just starting there. We're just starting to build the ordnance depot at Sidney, and housing was a very premium there. We we had lucked out. We had rented an apartment in the back, a nice apartment in the back of a house. And then during the during the war, as the war started, they rented the basement out to some other people. Well, then the owners decided they wanted to run the whole house, and so I had to look for an apartment. So I got an upstairs apartment for something, and then all of a sudden these government houses built for the ordnance depot workers weren't selling, so I bought one of those for, I guess, $100 down and $100 a month.
Well, now, all this time, like in 1942, then was your job a critical skill? Were you exempt from military?
Well, everybody in FAA was almost everybody in FAA was exempt from military service.
Oh, okay.
So mine was too, of course.
Yeah. All right.
And in fact, if you even mention, when you come to a recruiter and even mention FAA, well, they quit talking to you. But a few guys didn't mention FAA and applied for military service and got selected for military service. Not many, but very few of them.
Yeah. Did you ever have any idea to go in the military, or you're just rather to stay out?
Well, I had a pretty fair job there, and I was critical.
Yeah.
And the FAA we frowned on that very much to quit and go in the military.
So you stayed at Sydney till 1947, and you said here you went to Hayes Center.
Yeah, 1947. I got demoted in Sydney because a guy came back from overseas and bumped me down.
So, what's the term? MITIC.
Maintenance technician in charge.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you were still at JS9 at Hayes Center. So Hayes Center is quite smaller than Sydney, huh?
Oh yeah, it's much smaller. Only population only about 200.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. And the term INSAC? INSAC.
Interstate Airway Communication Station.
Okay, Interstate Airways Communication Center. Huh. Interesting, right. So it says here you were in charge of the landing field lighting, low frequency radio Adcock range, and in 1947 they already had VOR and TACAN, huh? Here at Imperial, it says.
Well, not until 1949 they got TACAN at Imperial, VOR and Imperial. I think it was 1949.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. The VOR then was very new, huh?
Right. Very new.
Yeah. And did you go to school anywhere for the?
Yeah, I went to VOR school down at an ILS school at Oklahoma City in these early or late in 1952. And I came home for Christmas and got my wife, and we moved to an apartment down at Oklahoma City that the government provided apartment, and we had to pay rent on it, I'm sure. I think I finished the schooling down there about the 1st of April in 1953.
So, were you impressed at all with the technology of the VOR as opposed to the radio range?
Well, it was different. Let's say it's different. It was a little bit hard for me to learn some of these concepts. One of the concepts was transmission lines and balancing the impedance on both ends of the transmission line, so it was approximately correct anyway.
Yeah. Now, were the VORs at that time, did they have their own generator for a standby, or were they commercial power?
Well, as far as I know, they were all commercial power, but there was a few of them had their own generators, like one in Utah someplace. It had 24-hour power generation and had keepers' quarters and I think quarters for the people there. It was way to hell and gone out on in the creation.
Yeah. It says here you worked with Delbert Myers for quite a while.
Yeah.
Did you maintain contact with him throughout your career? Or?
Well, pretty much not a lot. Christmas cards is about all. That's about all. Because he moved to North Platte and he stayed there and he became operator in charge at North Platte. And then he died about 1990, something like that.
Oh,
after he retired.
Yeah. All right, so it says in 1955 you applied for electronic engineer and you were accepted.
Right.
Okay, now, did that entail any more school back at Oak City?
No, not really. That was based on the experience I had. Some of it included the schooling I got at Oklahoma City, of course, a year or so before. But I developed a lot of, like this restart relay, developed a lot of modifications for that or whatever. Found the trouble anyway with restart relays. And several other projects I got into with engine generators. One of them was Sidney, Nebraska. Never started right. Well, I come to find out the factory had the vacuum line hooked in the wrong place, and I discovered that. And then the one one at Hayes Center with the restart relays at Hayes Center, and also had a VHF station, that transmitter and receiver that communicated with the like one at Hayes Center, and they didn't work right. Well, I found out that they didn't have some contact fingers in a cavity there that made and wasn't good in contact, so I got some contact spring material and put it in there, and it worked. So that was another project that I did, and there were several other ones I got involved with. I don't remember all of them. There's so many.
Yeah. Okay. So then it says in 55 you went back to Kansas City, Missouri as an electronic engineer in NAVAID's engineering section. So was that in design then?
Well, it wasn't particularly design. It was sort of a design of the sites. The way the FAA worked, as a civil engineer, the air traffic control people decided where they'd like to have a VOR. So the plant and structure section sent a guy out, an civil engineer out, to try to find a suitable site based on aeronautical, not nautical charts, but what the quad sheets they call them, based on the elevations and so forth. Then he talked to the landowner to try to get the landowner to agree to leasing, sometimes happening to buy, but so usually leasing the ground for a FAA facility on that ground. And also connected with that was obtaining leases or agreements for the surrounding site for 1,000 feet from the VOR, so that no buildings were built within that 1,000 feet. And then the electronics NAVAID's people, which I represented, would come out with what they called a site test truck. It had a VOR transmitter on the truck and some wings out that folded up for the forget the name of it now. Anyway, they laid out there, and the site test truck would sit up on the site and transmit, and an airplane out of flight inspection would fly circles around the site, and on the recording for that they made, while there was lines run across the chart zigzag like a Z, and if those lines were smooth, it was fine. Sometimes the lines had a lot of waivers in it, and that indicated there was something interfering. And sometimes we could fix the interfering, like it was a power line or a silo top or metal building or something like that. We could arrange to accommodate that to clear up the discrepancy, so we could use the site to fly with.
Yeah. So at this time, was it part of your job then to go out to these proposed sites?
Yes. Yeah. Now that's one of the things that I did, and then later on I had another crew of 2 or 3 men that went out, and I didn't go out. I supervised the guys going out, so I didn't go to the sites. I would review the work and see if it was agreeable to the set of site up there.
Well, then you had a year as a GS-11, then a GS-12. That's pretty rapid promotion there, very quick from 11 to 12.
Yeah.
And then GS-13, and then up to 14 on all the airways facilities.
Yeah.
And you retired in 1972.
Right.
What did you do between 1972 and today? Did you follow any of your hobbies in electronics? Or?
No, I didn't. I worked in genealogy since then, and I traveled around. I bought a microfilm camera and traveled around in microfilm, church records and county records, of genealogy, that's family, personal information, and set it up on cards. I had about 54,000 cards when I quit using cards, and then I changed over to computers, and I did the same thing on the computers. And the cards I'd started with first were from North and South Dakota, primarily Germans from Russia, and I've since transferred those to the State Historical Society of North Dakota. All the computer stuff. The cards were sent to Aberdeen, South Dakota, and they were destroyed in a flood several years ago.
Yeah.
And then when I came to Imperial, Nebraska, I started a website for Southwest Chase County, Nebraska, and it's got primarily Chase County births, marriages, and deaths in it.
Now, you're a member of the Airway Pioneers, correct?
Right.
Are you any member of any other societies related to your career?
Institute of, well, when I was here at Imperial first, I joined the Institute of Radio Engineers, and then went to Kansas City, and then they merged with the Association of Electrical Engineers. I forget the name of it exactly. The name was strictly Electrical Engineers. Well, then this went on for a little while, and they elected me chairman of the Kansas City section of Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers. It was merged, and so I was the chairman of that section down there for several years, and I still belong to it as a life senior member. That was quite an honor to get the senior member rated based on experience.
What was the hardest part of your job, okay, as a airway communications operator and then as later on as a technician? I mean, you had some pretty difficult problems come up that you had to find solutions to.
Well, there was lots of problems I would find solutions to, but one of the big problems that wasn't really recognized in those days was personnel relations. One of the problems at the station at Sydney, he started sending women out to the stations to operate. It turned out they were excellent operators, but they were a little touchy to handle. You get tangled up in them, and I had problems there. And management, I wasn't a good personnel manager as I could have been, or perhaps should have been.
Do you still keep in touch with any of your old workmates at all?
I think they've all died.
They all died, huh?
Yeah. I do keep in touch with a few people that I connected with in genealogy and history, local history, genealogy history particularly.
Yeah.
And I've made a few new friends as I go along too.
Yeah. How did your wife like all this moving around?
She didn't complain about it at all. She was a girl that had worked out all her life and for various farmers in North Dakota. And she was tickled to death to be married and just have somebody to tie on to. She worked. She was 8 years older than I was. She was about 28 when we got married, and she'd worked since she was about 12 years old. I worked out because the family had 6 girls, and they couldn't keep all 6 girls, so they'd farm them out to work for neighbors and friends.
Yeah. And where was she born?
She was born at Long Lake, South Dakota.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Her parents are both Germans from Russia.
Now, you're really serious. When you got to Granger, you didn't think, what have I got myself into? I mean...
No, I was tickled to death. Just tickled to death.
Yeah.
It's something I like to do.
Yeah.
Take weather observations and operate the teletype and send the weather observation to Senate. I think when I first got there, we sent it manually. And of course, I had to pass the typing test before I got when I took the examination. I don't know, 20 words a minute or whatever. Maybe it was 30, I don't remember now. But anyway, I had to pass the typing test. So teletype is not that much different from typewriter. A little different, but you get used to it quickly.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
What time of the year was it when you got there to Granger?
November the 17th, 1937.
In November?
Yeah. Weather was good at that time, no snow or anything on the ground.
Yeah. And some of the records I got on Medicine Bow, some of the supervisors were complaining about radio operators using the radio to talk to their friends over at different stations. Did you ever come across that at all?
Well, we didn't have radio per se.
Yeah.
At Granger, we had this one transmitter, I think, I don't know whatever wattage it was, but operated at I think 278 kilocycles, and that was kind of a working frequency, so you never did any kind of personal stuff on that at all. It was strictly business.
Now, was the frequency changed in the daytime and the nighttime?
Not on the low frequency facilities, no.
United Airlines at the time used 3108.
3105.
31.5, yeah.
Yeah. That was 3105 was the universal calling frequency.
Yeah.
Airlines didn't use it much; they had their own frequency. If that was 3105 was a calling frequency for itinerant pilots, you might say.
Yeah.
Also, 6010 was also an alternate calling frequency, and that was both frequencies were monitored by the Granger facility, and all the stations had those two frequencies they monitored, plus the low frequency. They were assigned to monitor a low frequency range someplace.
Yeah. Now the 3105, it was good day and night then.
It was good days generally, nights generally, but 6210 was an alternate. If you couldn't get somebody on 3105, then the pilots, most pilots had two frequencies. They could call on 6210 also.
Did you have much problem with precipitation static?
Not much. The biggest, precipitation static comes primarily in a blizzard, or a dust storm, where you've got electrical charged objects flying through the air, and they hit the antenna wire or whatever, and they make a popping noise because a little bit of electricity changes hands and sparks. And it does that. And sometimes some of the airplanes that start up close to a communication station that's got antennas out there, dust will fly up, and you get a big charge of static from the dust from the airplane prop wash blowing up on your antenna.
Yeah.
And after they get out in the field, then it's gone.
It's a big problem in airplanes. On a normal day, okay, I mean, with atmospherics good, what was the range that you could communicate with the pilots? 100 miles, 50 miles?
Well, I don't remember. We had such few contacts at Granger and other places that I've been. I think the reliable range is probably 25 miles.
Oh, I see, yeah. So as a communications operator then, when you contacted the aircraft, did you forward that information down the line? That's what they were going...
Depending on what they said.
Oh, okay.
Most of the communication was asking for weather, or it was a position report.
Oh.
It was a position report. It was supposed to go to air traffic control, then we'd call air traffic control and give it to them. Yeah. But we didn't have much of that.
Yeah. I got to harp on this again. When you got to Granger, you thought you were happy and was perfectly normal. I mean,
I was tickled to death. Of course, I'd gone from a job, paying I don't know whatever it was I got. I think I was getting, when I first started Miles City back, when I come back from the CC, I think they gave me $15 a week. And then about the time I got married, they gave me $20 a week. And they said if I'd stay, they'd give me $25 a week. But I talked to my friend, the parts man there, and he says, I think I'd go with the government. It said, if you stay here, you'll always get $25 a week. If you go with the government, you get more after a while. So that's why I opted to go with the government. Otherwise, I'd still be in Miles City.
Yeah. Now, did the government, it was the Department of Commerce at the time, did they consider a site like Granger a hardship? And you gave your extra money?
No, Granger wasn't considered a hardship. There's a lot of stations like Granger. Hardship ones are like that place in Utah where where the
Yeah, Strebel.
well, they didn't have anything that was 100 miles from any place,
Yeah.
and so Granger wasn't considered a hardship place. It was considered, that is what officially it was considered a hardship piece of, maybe by the guys that went there, depending on their background.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't a hardship as far as I was concerned. I was so glad to get a job that I was just tickled to death.
Yeah. How were the supervisors there at Granger? Were they pretty good guys?
Well, the first one was there, Walters, was good as from what I tell, but he left shortly after I got there. I think he left about the first of the year and went to Medicine Bow.
Rogers?
Pardon?
His name was Rogers?
No, what did I just say?
I thought you said Rogers.
Well, I can't.
That's all right.
He skipped my mind anyway. But he was. I got a picture of him in a book there someplace, and he was a good guy as far as I can tell. But the fellow I got later was a fellow named Brower, and he had a lot to learn. But he turned out it was okay.
Yeah.
He was a farm guy, you might say, and a lot of stuff he didn't understand. See, when they first started this, they put anybody in there that would take weather observations, and so they kept them there for after a while as airway keeper, and that kind of qualified them to bid on the next job above.
Now, some of the operators at Medicine Bow also were weather observation people. Were you involved in any of that at all, the weather obs?
Well, at the regular communication station, all the operators were weather observers.
I see. Okay.
All of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I took first right off the bat. I had to learn to read the thermometers and high and low thermometers, read the barometer and wind speed and direction of the wind, and put that on the teletype report. And that went every hour. You got to take those observations every hour, and you recorded them on a sheet there, and then you typed them off on the. First, it was just typing manually right onto the circuit. Well, then they got automatic transferers in there, and so you typed it on a perforator and set the tape up in a perforator, and when your time comes, you turn the perforator on and send.
Yeah. Now, how did you know the time comes? At Medicine Bow, they had bells.
Pardon?
How did you know the time came to disseminate the weather? At Medicine Bow, as it went down the line of weather observation stations, they had bells inside the building, and that would alert the operator to come online.
Well, we didn't have any of that. That was something they invented down at Medicine Bow. I later at Sydney made one like that. I used some relays out of a pinball machine and a timer, and I set up a timer that went off every hour at the right time, and to make the broadcast and also to send the weather.
Yeah. Did you socialize much with the other operators, or?
Quite a bit.
Quite a bit, huh?
Yeah, they were compatible. We socialized. The women had sewing clubs, and we'd have, I don't know, parties every month or something like that.
Yeah. What was your salary at that time?
Well, when I first started, Granger was $1,200 a year, and that I didn't get a promotion then. I don't think until I went to Columbia, Missouri. I don't remember for sure. But then when I went to Columbia, I think I got $1,600 a year.
Yeah.
And then when I went to St. Louis, I think I got $1,800. And I don't know when I went. I don't remember what I got when I went to Huron, South Dakota.
Yeah. So at Granger then, Site 12, it was about $400 annually.
About what?
Your salary then at Granger was about $400 a year?
$1,200 a year.
Huh?
$1,200 a year.
$1,200.
$100 a month, $1,200 a year.
That makes sense. Yeah. What did you do if you got sick? Did they have a doctor at Granger?
No. You just stayed home usually. If you was real sick, well, somebody took you to a doctor at Rock Springs or Kemmer.
Yeah.
Or Lyman.
Or Lyman. Lyman's not very big now. Couldn't have been too big then, was it?
Well, I suppose it was probably a little bigger than Granger, and my population might have been 400. I don't know, really know at all.
Okay. Well, is there anything you'd like to say? This is recorded forever now.
Well, I just like to say I really lucked out in my career with the Civil Aviation Administration or Federal Aviation Administration or whatever. I couldn't have got a better job with my education any place I went.
Yeah, it's a pretty fascinating career.
Yeah, and I'm so happy that I went through it all. A lot of times we're trying, but like everything else, there's a trying part of it too.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want to quit, but when you look around, you find out, well, I'd be in a hell of a shape if I quit. So.
Right. Yeah.
So I stayed with it.
Yeah.
A lot of other people stayed with it too, of course.
Okay, this concludes the interview with Kermit Karns, October 23rd, 2011. Okay.
Thank you very much.